In the Elder Scrolls IV Oblivion, one of the best and most straightforward factions the player can join is the Arena. Signing up is as easy as talking to Owen, the Red Guard Blade Master located in the Bloodworks below the arena itself. The player is then placed on the blue team, receives either light or heavy armor, and can then face off in a gladiator-like duel to the death with the opposing yellow team. There are plenty of riches, rewards, subplots, and glory for the player to gain with this faction. The arena itself is a massive circular enclosed area. In the center is the fighting pit in which the combatants battle for their lives. Within the pit are 4 columns, and in the center is a grate meant for containing and draining the blood of fallen combatants. There are 4 gates in which fighters can come out of, though for the most part only 2 of them are used. Lined up above the pit walls are rows of stands in which the audience can cheer and spectate from. Below the arena is the area called the Bloodworks. The blood draining system from the pit leads down to this undercroft and is appropriately named so. Down here, the combatants and respective team champions train, eat, and sleep. There are beds, tables, weapons, and training dummies available for use. Before the corridor that leads up into the fighting pit, there is a mysterious basin called the Basin of Renewal that the player can use to heal themselves after the fight. It fully restores the player's health, magicka, and stamina and clears you of any negative active effects. This basin is likely to have a very special enchantment placed upon it. The arena was built by a Red Guard named Gaiden Shinji between the First Era 946 and 947. Shinji was a highly skilled warrior and even a blade master whom was a member and up until his death, the leader of the Order of Diagna. This order was a fierce band of warriors who were tasked with protecting the Empire of Elysia. Shinji is considered a hero and even praised by the other combatants of the arena. Owen and Shinji both share the title of Blade Master, which is a specific NPC class in the game. This likely means that Owen is an extremely skilled fighter, and one wonders if he could have even bested the Grand Champion. Though, Blade Master could just be an honorary title for the individual who sets up and plans the matches. In the First Era year 2920, an important fight occurred here between Prince Juliek and Severian Chorak to determine which fighting style was superior, Akaviri or Cyrodiilic. In the Second Era year 582, when Molag Bal's forces overtook the Imperial City in a cruel and twisted manner, he forced innocent civilians to fight for their lives against the clans of Daedra. Below the arena, around the Bloodworks, was actually a vampire lair for some time, with the undead feeding off of an ample supply of combatant blood. In the same vein, similar areas below the arena were occupied by the Ebonheart Pact during the Three Banners War. The topic of today's video does have to do with the arena, but it's one of the lesser remembered and lesser explored features of the arena. Before entering into the Bloodworks and getting lost in the glory and bloodshed, standing outside the wooden door next to a wooden table and chest is a wood elf named Hundalin. He is very easy to ignore and miss, but if the player decides to talk to him, he will introduce you to today's video topic, which is gambling and betting on arena matches. Through gambling and betting, the player has the ability to make either some quick gold or to lose their entire investment they put in. Hundalin stands outside the arena between 9 AM and 9 PM every single day. He is the person to talk to in order to place bets. He tells you that you can place a bet of either 25, 50, or 100 gold on either the blue team's combatant winning or the yellow team's combatant winning. Seemingly, the gold you give him for the bets is placed in the lockbox to his right, and the payouts come from there as well. The lockbox can be lockpicked, however it is a very hard difficulty. It's a crime to break into the lockbox and is punished accordingly. When lockpicked in the nighttime while no one's around, there is 500 gold inside that can be stolen. After successfully placing your bet, the player will go through the door to Hundalin's left and enter into the arena stands. This specific landing is meant for all of the gamblers who place bets on the upcoming match. There are seats, tables, beverages, and even several other NPCs who have placed bets. The scheduling data behind these 7 resident NPCs is actually impressive, with some only sitting in and betting on fights during weekdays, weekends, or specific days of the week. Before the fight starts, an Imperial male announcer, the same one who calls the players' fights, will welcome everyone to the arena and introduce the blue team's combatant and the yellow team's combatant. The gates then lower and the fighters battle to the death. A victor comes out on top, and depending on if the player was lucky in their guess of who would win, they can receive a payout from Hundelin that is double of what they initially paid. On the contrary, if they guess wrong, the player will be told better luck next time by the Wood Elf and completely lose their initial bet. Betting can be done as many times per day as possible before the arena closes at 9 PM. Interesting to note is that with console commands, the player can fly past the invisible wall from the stands and actually attack, kill, and loot the combatants with no penalty. The betting feature for the game is very simple and fairly entertaining. It is not a decent way to make gold by any means, as you do have a 50-50 chance of losing whatever you put in. The maximum amount a player can make from their bet winnings is 200 gold. The odds of winning the 200 gold are certainly not high, so maybe the player should just consider looting and selling items for income, right? Well, to answer that question properly, we'll have to ask another question. Is there any way the player can determine the outcome of these seemingly random matches? The first thing I did to try and answer this question was to sit in on 10 matches and try and notice if there were any patterns or similarities between the fights. The character I used is level 1 and will likely have an effect on the combatant's gear and abilities. I bet the maximum of 100 gold on all 10 fights, as well as always place my preference on the blue team. Here are some results and data. Surprisingly, the first 4 matches were won by the blue team. On an even more shocking note, the last 6 matches were all won by the yellow team. I was surprised to see a lack of alternating decided matches. This means that the blue team had a 40% chance success rate and the yellow team had a 60% success rate. The longest match was 1 minute and 15 seconds and the shortest match was around 37 seconds. The average match lasted roughly 44 seconds long. The blue team combatant is always a male Imperial and the yellow team combatant is always a female Imperial. There were no archers or mages competing in any of the fights. All of the combatants engaged in close quarter combat using hand-to-hand, blade, and blunt skills. They all wore either light armor or heavy armor raiments as is required when fighting in the arena, and it was constantly changed around with who wore what. Their shields and helmets were made from different smithing techniques such as fur, iron, steel, and elven. At least one of the combatants carried 100 iron arrows on them, however never used them and never carried a bow. The game did an excellent job at truly randomizing which NPC would be slain. There were little to no noticeable patterns from each victor that would have given me the upper hand on future bets. Even if there was, bets are placed before the fights start and there is no way of knowing the gear for either combatant. Overall, I bet 1,000 gold and including profits and initial payments, I am down by 200 altogether. With these results and corresponding data, I decided to bet on 10 more matches with my new findings and to see if I could notice anything else. Again, I would bet 100 gold per match and place my preference on the yellow team this time. As from my data, there was a perceived 60% higher success rate. Here's how it went this time. The yellow team won rounds 2, 3, and 5, totaling 3 wins altogether. The blue team this time won rounds 1, 4, and 6 through 10, totaling 7 wins. This would give the blue team a 70% success rate with these last 10 matches and a 55% success rate across all 20 matches. This means the yellow team had a 30% success rate these last 10 matches and a 45% success rate across all 20 matches. The game has done a great job in ensuring the player truly has no clue which team to bet on. There was some data that I was able to pick up on while watching these last 10 matches that was actually pretty interesting. For starters, in 7 out of the 10 matches, each combatant was wearing one of the 2 different armor raiment types. In 4 out of 7 matches, the heavy armor came out on top with a 57% success rate. However, the most interesting and telling clue as to who might win the fight was what weapons they were using. In every instance where a combatant was using a two-handed weapon, that fighter would win. There were 6 fights where two-handed weapons were used, and 5 of them were against non-two-handed weapons. The battle axe was fought with on 3 occasions, twice a steel one was used, and once a silver one was used, proving to possibly be the most effective arena weapon. Daggers and bare fists, on the other hand, both had 2 losses and never won a fight, rendering them the least effective in the arena throughout these 10 matches. Although when in the arena, it might be possible to see who has the edge before the fight starts, it's unfortunately information that cannot be used before the fight and still leaves the player blindly guessing. Overall, 1,000 gold was placed for betting payments, and after profits, I lost 400 gold in total. So, is it true then that maybe the player cannot predict or have a hand in determining the outcome? Well, actually, apparently the answer is no. It's not true that there's nothing we can do. There is a very big way in which the hero of Kvatch can actually influence and practically fix the matches to have a variable percentage on being correct. It turns out, the attribute that most people actually ignore and don't spend many points on has a crazy impact on the turnout of the fights. Depending on how high the player's luck attribute is, actually determines how much health the fighter you bet on has. Luck points of 0 to 49 grant no health modification for the preferred arena fighter. From 50 to 59 luck points, the health modifier increases by 5, giving your fighter the slight edge. From there, every increment of 10 points increases the health modifier by 10, leading all the way up to 30 with a skill level of 100. Interestingly, there is a glitch where the values of 99 luck points and anything above 100 will actually cancel out any potential modifier your fighter would have had. So, the player should be sure to either stay below 99 or hit exactly 100 points. With my character, I made sure their luck was below 50 points using enchantments to ensure fair fights and unbiased outcomes. With this newfound revelation in our research, let's place some final bets on 10 more matches and see the results and outcomes. I switched over to my higher level character to see if that would affect the combatant's gear and skills, and my character's luck modifier is at 100. Bets of 100 gold will be placed every match, and they will always be placed on the blue team. Here's how it went. The blue team won rounds 1, 2, 4, 7, 9, and 10, totaling 6 wins. This means the blue team, the team in which I bet on while having luck at 100, had a 60% success rate. In turn, the yellow team won rounds 3, 5, 6, and 8, totaling 4 wins. The team that I had no stake in and should have had a massive disadvantage had a success rate of 40%. While these 10 fights yielded the best results for my bets, it was still less fights than I thought I would win, with my chosen fighter supposedly having a plus 30 health modifier. However, the most interesting part, and to further support my claim that two-handed weapons seem to dictate who the winner will be, a two-handed weapon was used in 8 out of 10 fights. In 6 of those fights, we saw the other combatant using a one-handed weapon or their bare fists. In every single one of those fights, the two-handed weapon wielder was victorious, and even more astonishing, 4 of those 6 fights, aka every single round the yellow team won, was the yellow team combatant wielding a two-handed weapon. It truly seems like even with luck on the player's side, nothing can defeat a two-handed weapon. Other interesting notes include that in only 2 of the 10 fights did we see heavy armor raiments and light armor raiments both in use. The winner of both fights was wearing the heavy armor raiment, perhaps setting the claim that the light armor raiment is less effective. Magic was used twice across these 10 fights. These spells appeared to be some form of destruction magic that had to be casted via touch. The two-handed claymore won the most fights with a total of 4 slayings, 3 times a steel version was used, and 1 time a silver version. It seems like the steel claymore was the most effective weapon throughout these 10 rounds. Bare fists were used a total of 3 times throughout these rounds and lost every single time, deeming them likely the least effective combat type in general for the arena. Even though this character was a significantly higher level, the weapon and armor types used were still of the same smithing and caliber that my lower level character experienced and spectated. Overall, while watching the fights and having a stake in them is very entertaining, it really is just a fun hobby or pastime to do in the game. It's not a reliable source of in-game income, and even when the luck attribute is maxed out, there is still a decent chance of losing your bet. I think on a grander scale, the gambling and betting feature of the arena in Oblivion is truly a testament to the amount of detail that Bethesda puts into their games. It's remarkable how so much content was cut from Oblivion, yet we were still fortunate enough to have a small detail like betting and spectating on arena matches make it to the final cut. For example, apparently every city was supposed to have its own version of the arena. Whether this meant the player would have had to travel all across Cyrodiil to find their next match, or that you could have easily picked up new fights and subplots whichever arena you chose to fight in, is unclear. It really makes one wonder if Oblivion had its completed, full vision of a game available for consumers, what other really interesting features of the game would we have been able to experience?